because I would cry myself to sleep, because I would be in such fear of dying, I thought that at times I was going to go mental. Truly, I thought I was going to be mental. And I would think I need to go to therapy or something because I'm in such a state of terror that it's affecting my life. Like, it affects everything about me. But spiritually, I had never found any peace. And so I thought to myself, but a therapist, how can a therapist help me learn how to speak in tongues if my church cannot even help me speak in tongues? And so I did not seek out therapy. I stayed locked in fear and pain and dejection.
You mentioned you couldn't just go to therapy. And that really stood out to me because that's another thing that I've heard from potential donors and other mainstream Christians who are asking us questions. They'll ask something along the lines of, well, you know, if they're suffering, why would they need a ministry like Berean Holiness or Responsible Faith? You know, sounds like they need a counselor. Sounds like they need therapy. Maybe they should just pay for therapy. But like you said, I loved how you put it. Well, my therapist can't help me speak in tongues.
Nope.
So there's something underlying there. You need to disentangle the theology. But would there be anything else that you would say to someone who's just like, oh, well, they could pay for secular resources?
Yeah, no, you can't, because you don't feel like that they're going to help you. So why go put out your money if you don't feel like they're ultimately going to be able to help you? And sometimes when you feel so nuts and crazy, you don't think that someone who hasn't been there will understand where you're coming from. And so if I had gone to some secular therapist and said, I can speak in tongues, right? They're going to think I'm really crazy. And they're going to say, well, why do you need to do that? And my thought is, you don't know the Bible. So I needed help from people who have been there. And I needed people who knew what speaking in tongues was to say, well, look at these scriptures. I needed someone who had figured it out. And so the help is not just in secular therapy. You need people who know the ground that you've walked on. And so it's ultimately important, because if I had not found spiritual abuse, if I hadn't found Deanna Joe, if all of your stuff that had been posted that I repeatedly share and save on my phone, if people hadn't spoken out, I could still be stuck. And one day when I die, because I will die, I could have been in terror, absolute terror. And I just cannot adequately say thank you enough to people like you and Deanna Joe and Spiritual Abuse and so many others. It comes from people who are willing to invest their time like you're doing and like other people have done that have set people free. And I am just one person who has been set free. And I will gladly point to many people like you that have helped me. It's ultimately important.
When you're trying to leave hyper-fundamentalism, not a lot of people can afford, if they're looking at it like, well, I'm just going to go see a counselor. Not a lot of people can afford that. In this, what Berean Holiness represents is a ministry. And so what you are doing is saving people, right? And it's be the same thing. I would look at it as you're reaching out to people, the same as like you were giving to a missionary. I would consider what you're doing is being in a home missions field. And so that definitely takes support. But from the individual looking to get out, there's a lot of those resources are not available to people who can't afford them. And you know, if you're a young person, like let's say you're a young adult, freshly, you know, if your parents are in it, you're trying to get out, you're not going to have a lot of financial resources. And then just how everything that you're doing, just like how I described, you know, you having your Facebook system, you was able to connect with me. All of those things that you're doing and all of those resources that you're putting out there, you never know who that's going to reach or who that's going to touch. And so somebody may not necessarily be looking for you, but you may find them and they'd be like, wait, I need this. And so that's the flip side to it is you could say, well, if people need it, they're just going to come to you and get it. Well, you're not necessarily like a Walmart where somebody just needs it and they're going to go find it. It's somebody stumbling on it and realizing, hey, this, maybe I need to start looking at this. Maybe I need to start being more analytical. And so one, there's a lot of people that don't have the resources to just go purchase a book or purchase, as crazy as it sounds, to just go purchase a different study Bible, or, a lot of people just don't have those types of resources. But also, you being able to look at something as an opportunity and maybe create a program or do something that you feel like is going to reach somebody. They may not be reaching out to you, but you're going to be reaching out to them.
And then there was Berean Holiness. My cousin said, there is this website that you have got to check out. And I was like, oh my goodness, we had so many phone calls and texts back and forth when I discovered Berean Holiness. And she was like, I know, right? And the things that you did about hair. And I was like, okay, I had thought, all right, I see the authority there, but there was still some question in my mind, like about the hair. And you guys helped me with that so much. If I had had Berean Holiness, access to Berean Holiness earlier on, there's no doubt, because you're in the privacy, of your own home. You're checking out Facebook and you see this little blurb come on about things you're interested in, the hair, why this, why that. And the wonderful thing about Berean Holiness is you go back to the Bible. And it's not just, oh, look up this verse. You have the verses there. You usually write it out, and you're so thorough, and it's obviously not biased. It's not about you wanting to wear the pants or wanting to do this other thing. It's obviously not about that. I think that the resources like Berean Holiness, that you're able to initially get something that grabs your attention, that draws you deeper into finding out the answers. It has to be short enough to hold the attention and not too scary, because a person that's been through, being in these groups, they're easily scared off because of the fear mongering. And it can be scary to see your group, what you feel like is attacked. So it has to come across in the right way. There's little things that you're using their own clips and stuff to just show just a snippet, like, really, and then to show, well, what does the Bible say? Like, is this, and the things that you do with that are just pictures and then there's some words. They're so meaningful. They're so touching. They get you thinking. And you're like, once you start thinking for yourself, that's the problem. I didn't want to think for myself because I didn't trust myself. I wasn't coming up with the right answers. I was not fitting into the group when I was thinking on my own. So I began to think that it was okay to hand over that thinking. And it's not okay at all, but that's what's happening. If you can get people in baby steps to start thinking for themselves, they'll go a little farther, and they'll go a little farther, especially if they're really seeking after the Lord. They'll realize that what they're in, it is a movement by and for people.
If we were to put on a conference or local events or one-on-one support or more group support or more curriculum, all of these things, there are hundreds of hours on the back end. So of course it's going to cost or need funding. So as we talk to some of the people who are interested in this, and they'll ask us, why should we fund these, faith-based resources for people who are leaving hyper-fundamentalism when, there are people in third world countries that haven't heard the gospel. We could send our money over there. Is this really a need? Is this really something that should be funded? You could just charge these people and they could kind of pay their own way. Is there just any other remarks that if you could speak to those potential donors, what would you say to them?
One thing I would like to speak to is the sucking of money from the congregation of these hyper-fundamentalist movements. You're getting money sucked from you, the 10% tithe, but also that's just what you're supposed to give. So if you want a blessing, you better give the extra 5%. And then if you really want a blessing, you've got to give offerings. And then there's the missions, and then there's the the various other causes. You're giving all the time. So that's one reason why you cannot charge these people. Most of them are not upper middle class people that are in these religions. That hasn't been my experience. Very few were wealthy. There were some business owners that did really well, but those were few and far between. The next thing I would say is, oh yeah, they could just leave. No, they can't just leave. They need help to leave. Why fund this? Because take a look at how big United Pentecostal Church International is. It is a lot bigger than you would think. And then just do a search for Apostolic Church. In the South, there are a lot of them. This is a need, because these are people that really think that they're Christian, and they're not. They're not. And as an American, in our country, this problem is here. If you're thinking about donating at all to it, I would say that you need to explore the need as far as what kind of people are involved in it and the damage that it does, because it's not just an issue of salvation, which is a huge issue. This is a child abuse issue. This is a domestic violence issue. This is a various addiction issue, that all these things are hidden. You're encouraged to live a life of deception every day. You just have to look the part when you go to church and when you're seen at Walmart and stuff. But these people are training their children to be deceptive. And you've got young people that enter into marriages with all kinds of bad habits, pornography and whatnot, that's been just hidden. And so this is a problem, or this is a group that is causing lots and lots of problems for future generations. It's a terrible thing, and it needs lots of funding.
You're trying to offer a place of rest and true, honest discipleship, which we've never had, and don't know. Some people are too scared to be discipled. So I think that the smallness of it, although the cost may be increased, is so very important. And to keep it as free as possible is so very important, because Jesus made the gospel free. And these people have already been tapped. That their finances have already been soaked right up. And I mean, when I left, I felt like an ATM card. Every time they wanted something, they wanted new furniture for the pastor's house. They wanted to throw a big party for the pastor's mother, but you weren't invited. But people who need help, even in the broader secular system, there isn't help. Your insurance is not going to pay for counseling, and if it did, God forbid, you're going to get some real interesting counseling. So there's no help for people that are emotionally damaged, especially by a church. Even if you're not able to provide this service, and they do finally find some way to pay for help, they're not going to get Christian help. Their insurances are not going to pay for that. They're going to get secular help.
You can find 24 different answers and a whole group of people saying different things, and who do you listen to? But when it's something like this, where they have a story like you and I, and the group is focused towards that, then I think somebody can find community, because, hey, I found Berean Holiness, for example. They know where I'm coming from. For me, like you said, I was blessed to find Jeff Garner. He knew where I was coming from, but like you said, that's rare. So something like this, where someone can come across it, goodness, I wish there was a way to just mass market this. You probably do too. I don't know what the answer is for that, but to fund it to the point where it can reach as many people as possible, and people that can connect again with community. I think any type of donation towards this would help people that are searching. Um, and hopefully if they come across it, they don't have to look as long or as hard, and because the resources are right there. But I mean, the resources don't come out of nowhere. So I hope there is someone out there that God touches their heart to deal with it, to deal with them and contribute. But it would have been a marvelous thing. I mean, I found Berean Holiness on Facebook when you guys first started it a few years ago. It was a video of you and Nathan talking to each other. And I remember looking at that and I'm like, wow, here's somebody else that gets it. Came from what I came from. But, I don't know. That might have been like a needle in a haystack. Facebook algorithm somehow bringing it up into my feed. And I know you've had so many more people discover Berean Holiness since you began it. But yeah, I mean, to have a community out there that's got a light that's shining, if somebody can donate to that and help the light shine brighter, then then please do that. Please do that, because there's hurting people out there. And this experience, I shared part of my story at one point becoming suicidal. I mean, this has traumatized a lot of people, wounded them deeply. And I got so upset yesterday on one of these pages where hearing somebody else's story, how much they'd been through in a hyper fundamentalist church, and the trauma and the wounds in their spirit. And I got angry, for one, that it happened, but for two, that I couldn't do much about it. And if there's a community that we can point them to, if I met somebody because I can only help so much, but if I met somebody that's really in a place of struggling, I can say, hey, here's Berean Holiness. They have better resources than I can. They can help you. I think that would be a wonderful thing. And goodness, I hope somebody out there is listening that can assist.